Okay, so we are now recording. I'm Adam Fishman. I'm the Executive Director of American Friends of Likud, and this is one of our first, actually our second Zoom calls. We are joined today by Senior Political Correspondent and very good friend of the program, Gil Hoffman, who is speaking to us from the Jerusalem Post office, I see, right? Is that where you're at? Okay, fantastic.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Gil, there's a lot of things going on. Welcome to American Friends of Likud, our Zoom series now, the second in our Zoom series. And we're hopefully going to be have a lot more. Actually, tomorrow, we've already scheduled the Minister of Energy, Yuval Steinitz, to join us here tomorrow at 12:30 Eastern, 7:30 p.m. in Israel. Next week, I believe it's going to be on Tuesday. Member of Knesset Mai Golan is going to be joining us as well. So hopefully as we continue, now that we have a government that's been formed, however, whatever we want to say about that government, whatever you're going to say about that government, we at least now know that we have people in certain positions, whether and how long they stay there is another question. But I'm going to turn it over to you, Gil. Like I said, you've been a tremendous friend of the program for a long time, always willing to give us updates and insight as to what's going on inside the Knesset building. And now that this past Sunday, we've been able to finally get a government sworn in, as bloated as it may be. I now turn to you. Oh, one last thing before I actually turn to you, and that is, there is an opportunity here if you want to, for Q&A, if you want to ask Gil a question as we go along. I should be able to see it, and I will be asking the questions here if you send it through the Q&A. If you have trouble with that, I have another computer sitting right next to me, and I've got my email, adam@aflikud.org, or if you have my my WhatsApp, you can try to send me through WhatsApp as well, and we'll try to get all the questions answered. Without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to you, Gil. Take it away, my friend.
Pleasure being with you, Adam, and pleasure being with this wonderful group of people. I looked at the participants list. Good to see a lot of old friends. I've taken a break from watching Michael Jordan's Last Dance in order to do this conference call. It's very exciting, so it's kind of hard to go away from that, reliving the good times of my life. Please don't tell me what happens at the end. I want to keep the suspense. And the very fact that I could, this early in the day, only 9:05, watch television other than news from Israel shows that things are going well here, you know? That we finally have stability, we finally have a government. You know, the day after the government was formed, yesterday, the night editor says to me, so what's your lead to the paper, Gil? And I said to him, get used to it. It's not me anymore. I've been carrying this paper on my back for 18 months. I've been writing lead to the paper other than the worst Corona days when my wife did it, as you heard on a previous American Friends of the Likud conference call. Every night for those 18 months. And now it is time for other people to write the lead to the paper. And that's a good thing for the country, because the other reporters write about what our government does when it is working for the people. My job is to write about the politicians when they are working for themselves, which is what happens when we have a constant election campaign for 18 months. Now that I'm working less, the less I work, the better it is for Israel. And that's a beautiful thing, that I'm finally not working so hard. Just to put into perspective how long I have been working nonstop, the top movie in America on the day that the Knesset was disbanded in December 2018 was Aquaman. Does anyone remember Aquaman?
A long time ago.
So the world has come a long way for worse and for better since Aquaman. And Israel really, really needed a government. And the only way for us to have a government was for politicians, I believe I've said this before, but it has to be reiterated, was for politicians to finally start lying. Our problem for 16 months or so was that the politicians made promises during election campaigns and then kept them after the government was formed. I mean, after the election ended. During the campaign, they would say things like, I won't sit with this person, I won't build a coalition with him, I don't want to be with her. And then what was supposed to happen was when the election would be over, they would break those promises and facilitate the formation of a government. But over and over and over again, the politicians kept their promises and were not lying. Finally, after our election in March, the politicians went back to normal and admitted that they were lying. And they finally gave up their stupid promises and instead went with calm promises. And that is how we have a government today, thanks to politicians going back to normal and, thank God, lying. And so now that we have this government, uh, are they done fighting? No, of course not. Um, we'll give them a few minutes to get into their chairs and everything before they start fighting for real. But we've already seen 4 cracks. The most obvious crack is on the diplomatic issue. There's going to be a peace plan of Donald Trump. And yes, both Benny Gantz, the defense minister, and Gabi Ashkenazi, the foreign minister, have said they will implement this plan. But they look at it in a very different way. They like the parts that the Likud people don't like the whole Palestinian state part of that plan, right? It's in the plan. The Likud people don't like that. And that is going to be a major thing that they are going to be fighting over. I just got a message from a Likud Knesset member. I'm going to say no to that. Interesting. I will tell you what that means momentarily when the time comes. So they are going to be fighting over how to implement Donald Trump's peace plan. The peace part, for instance, is what they're going to be emphasizing, the blue and white people. The Likud people are less into that word. We're suddenly hearing that word again. Wait a second. Even Kadima, they never used that word. Isaac Herzog made a point of never using that word. Tzipi Livni even stopped using that word. And suddenly people are using that P word again. That P word could lead to a problem. And that's where, of course, the American politics fall into this as well, because the Gantz and Ashkenazi, according to the coalition agreement, cannot stop the implementation of any part of this plan. 2 people can. One is Donald Trump, and the other one is potentially, after November, or really after January, Joe Biden. Now, let's not forget that Netanyahu, in an interview with Gil Hoffman of the Jerusalem Post in February, said once the plan starts getting implemented, no one can stop it. No administration, if a different administration gets elected, can stop it. He said the goalposts will have been moved, said the man who was raised watching the Eagles in Philadelphia, but when he was stationed in New York as a diplomat, pretended to be a New York Giants fan. That quote will be tested because Joe Biden has said the very opposite, as have his aides, even in greater depth. So they might agree more with Gantz. We'll see. That could lead to confrontation. The second fight is obviously the legal front. Our prime minister will start being on trial officially next Sunday, and it's going to look bad for a while, and this is going to embarrass Gantz and Ashkenazi and lead to them criticizing him already in an interview that's going to be broadcast in another half hour here. Gantz is going to be criticizing Netanyahu, and so that will create tension. The new Justice Minister, Avi Nissenkorn, intends to reverse some of the things done by the previous 2 Justice Ministers, Ayelet Shaked and Amir Ohana. That's going to be a pretty big fight. The quote, when he got the job officially from Ohana, and the changeover ceremony from Nissenkorn was, I will be the wall protecting the Supreme Court and the legal establishment. And that doesn't sound too good to Likud ears. The third divide is over the economy, where Blue and White gave some key economic ministries to people with very different views than the Likud's capitalism. Amir Peretz is our Minister of Economy, the former Industry and Trade Ministry. And he said when he got the job, I'm going to stop the capitalism chaziri, which translates into swinish or piggish capitalism. is criticizing his own government by saying that and implementing whatever he'll implement. And so there's going to be a lot of fighting about that. Likud MKs were immediately attacked him after that, and not realizing it. Wait, he's on your side now. You're not allowed to do that. Um, and the fourth divide is over what the Likud stole, for lack of a better word, from blue and white in the coalition talks.
Stole, did
You
you
know,
say?
stole.
Okay.
Yes, there were negotiations back and forth over what they get and what they get, and when you divide, you divide. And then the last day or so, Netanyahu had his back against the wall. How to satisfy all the Likud people who expected to be ministers? He didn't have enough to give them. So one way is to ask Gantz, I need more responsibilities or whatever. Another is to steal. And honestly, that's what they did. There are 14 different major responsibilities that were taken from blue and white portfolios and given to Likud new ministers at the last minute. For instance, Tzachi Hanegbi. He's the minister without portfolio in the prime minister's office. Officially, he's in charge of nothing. But they said what his responsibilities would be, and they were all taken from the foreign ministry. Or from the non-existent ministry that Tzachi Hanegbi had in the previous government that he can't keep. For instance, Tzipi Chotoveli is the Minister of Settlement Affairs. Well, she got things that belong to the Justice Ministry, that belong to the Agriculture Ministry, the Chativa L'Tiyashvut of the World Zionist Organization. The Settlement Division was Uri Ariel's in the Agriculture Ministry. Well, the Agriculture Minister is now a guy from Blue and White, Alon Schuster, so he's supposed to have that. They didn't ask, they took. It's a ton of money, a huge amount of money. They just took it without asking. Amsalem is the ministerial liaison to the Knesset. He's supposed to be in the Knesset and say what the government wants to do, but they decided to add he's going to be the minister of cyber, taking things away from the defense ministry. He's going to, of Benny Gantz. He's going to be the minister of Digital Israel, a program of the science ministry, also blue and white. Gadi Yavarkan, very nice idea. To appoint Gadi Yavarkan was promised to be a minister. He appointed deputy minister of public security. Nice things that help Ethiopians in that ministry. But the nice things that they took away from the welfare ministry of labor, which is part of blue and white now. Can't do that. So that's going to be fighting too over these. There are 14 different things.
Well, the first question I have about all that would be, if they're taking from other ministries to create, they're taking those budgets, they're not adding in a new budget. It's the same amount of money just spread out amongst more people. Is that the case or no? If you take a budget section out of a certain ministry and give that responsibility to somebody else, does that
whole department that they're taking away? They're taking away staff. They're taking away, the budget of the World Zionist Organization is a World Zionist Organization budget, not a state budget, but the minister controls it.
So a couple of questions have already started. I don't want to stop you. Is there more that you want
to?
No,
that's okay.
So a couple of questions have already started coming in. Mindy Stein in New Jersey is asking that Israel's been increasing its ties with China. That's been a big issue these days, at a time when the U.S. is seeking to have all of its allies, including Israel, reduce those ties. So she asks, to what extent can Israel maintain its ties with China and without antagonizing or jeopardizing the relationship with the U.S.? Now, I know that's not necessarily your purview, but this is something that's been going on very much so, and especially after Pompeo's trip just last week.
That was the main reason for Pompeo's trip. People here focused on the impact on the Trump plan, but it's not. He does not facilitate the Trump plan. Jared Kushner does. So, no, it was about China. The first trip abroad by the Secretary of State, not counting troops in Afghanistan, after the outbreak of the coronavirus, ends up being to Israel about China. That's how serious it is. And what they're worried is that Israel moved toward China too much, not realizing how important this is to America. In military connections, things involving intelligence, facilitating things that Israel didn't even know it had to ask to work with China on. Infrastructure projects. I mean, the Chinese are building a train to Eilat. Um, those things are sensitive. Ports, having the Chinese control ports, you can't do that in a New World Order. That's like cooperating with Russia during the Cold War. Israel woke up too late to realize that it had gone too far. And Pompeo came to stop that. And Israel said, "But can we do this? But can we do that? But can we do this for a little bit longer?" No, no, no. America was very firm. Stop now. And sent the highest level to prove it. And one you consider it a compliment because they're not sending Pompeo to some European country to say stop dealing with China. The very fact that America respects Israeli technology, Israeli infrastructure, Israeli intelligence so much that they have to send the Secretary of State on his first trip abroad after Corona, or America still in Corona, really proves a point.
How is now that we've begun to open up Israel a little bit or a lot bit more, at least domestically here in terms of the coronavirus, how is it affecting what's going on in the Knesset now that we finally have a government moving forward, or is it?
I'm not there, like I'd be happy to go there and wear this stupid thing, but they're not open to the press yet. I have in order to have social distancing in the plenum, they had to kick out the press. And so my seat is now the seat of Tamar Zandberg from Meretz, and I don't know when I'm getting it back. The night that Yariv Levine got sworn in, I wrote his spokeswoman. I said, "Fine, take my seat in the plenum. You don't have to let us back in for a while, but please let me come back to the gym." Right now, we're not allowed in the building, and it's a serious problem. Whereas you see the committees are meeting in 2 different rooms to this very day. Today there was a meeting of the Arrangements Committee on the Norwegian law, and they were in 2 different rooms.
So
Foreign Affairs Defense Committee.
could you once again explain the Norwegian law? I think a lot of people do understand it, but there is a little bit of confusion as to what that means for the people that are currently in the Knesset, those who are waiting to get in the Knesset, and why is there such opposition to it? Or is there?
The Norwegian law says that ministers can quit and be replaced temporarily by the next candidates for Knesset on their list, and then if they quit, if the ministers quit their government, they can go back to being in the Knesset and send their replacements home. And the reason why this is being implemented is because Blue and White has no MKs. They have 15 members of Knesset, 12 are ministers, 3 are members of, 3 are heads, chairman of very significant Knesset committees. They have not one person to do the job of a regular foot soldier in the Knesset. So they wrote this bill in a very weird way to be basically only about Blue and White, and say if you have the amount of MKs you have that are not ministers or deputies determines how many ministers can quit to let new MKs come in. So the way it works with the math,
ministers to quit, meaning they are no longer both a minister and an MK at the same time.
Right, because ministers can't function in the Knesset anyway. They can't propose bills. They can't go to Knesset committee meetings. That's for MKs, not for ministers, even though ministers are MKs. All ministers do in the Knesset is vote in the plenum. So according to the bill, the Blue and White can have 5 people quit. Likud can have 2. Shas, Ma'ariv reported that they can have 3. I don't fully understand that from the bill. Why Likud would have 2 and Shas would have 3 does not make any sense to me. But that's what has been understood, which is interesting just because the 3rd guy to come in on the Shas list is an Ethiopian rabbi. End up having 3 Ethiopians in the Knesset, which would tie a record. Very weird guy this guy is. Likud will have Osnat Mark and Ariel Kellner come back to people who were members of Knesset briefly. But Blue and White would have 5, of which one would go to Yesh Atid and be in the opposition. 4 apparently will be part of Blue and White and be their soldiers in the Knesset.
Speaking of other people joining the Knesset or perhaps even joining the coalition, one of our questioners just asked about the Yaminah party. Now, we know that Rafi Peretz split off from the Yaminah party in order to be part of the coalition and become the minister, I believe, of Jerusalem affairs. But we're talking about some very high-profile people in Naftali Bennett, and Ayelet Shaked, and Smotrich as well, that our people and people on this call and paying attention to what's going on in Israel are familiar with. What's the story there? Is there a chance? I know that Bibi Netanyahu, Prime Minister Netanyahu, did say he hopes that there will be others to join the bloc down the line. What's going on there behind the scenes, that, as far as you can tell us?
I don't think there was a chance to begin with for Yamina to be joining. I think it was very clear from the beginning that Bibi did not want to have Bennett and Shaked, who he does not like personally, part of his government. And he toyed with them, he played with them, he led them on a little bit. He got excited for a while, and it wasn't going to happen. Netanyahu wanted to be the furthest right-wing party in the government when Israel implements applying sovereignty to parts of Judea and Samaria.
Why is that
And
important?
he didn't want to Bennett there as a minister taking credit for things, or Shaked, or any other party. Likud is doing this. This proves Likud makes history. Likud annexed the Golan, right? Likud facilitated the peace treaty with Jordan. People don't remember that, even though Rabin signed it. But it was the Shamir government that did that. So
this goes to the lasting legacy of Netanyahu?
This is the lasting legacy of Netanyahu. He's not going to attack Iran, their nuclear program. So what he gets out of Donald Trump in the last either 5 years or 5 months of Donald Trump in power is going to be his legacy. Even if there's time, if Netanyahu outlasts Trump by a year, well, that's garbage time afterward. It's between now and January is when Netanyahu's legacy happens.
So Bobby Meth has asked a question specifically about Avigdor Lieberman. He spent some time in the plenum the other day, calling out all those would-be or wannabe ministers. And our immediate past president, Julio Messer, actually wrote a piece about it, and it was an op-ed in a different newspaper in Ruth Sheva. What's going on with Avigdor Lieberman? Where is he standing right now? Has his political future been hurt by this process, or by, I guess, sticking to his guns and now being on the outs because there is some kind of a unity government? Is he seen as someone who didn't lie, let's say?
Adam, Bobby, Dr. Messer, you've just wasted more than a minute talking about Avigdor Lieberman. That's more than I've done over the last month. Why? He's irrelevant now. He's a fifth wheel in an opposition between Balad and Bennett. Like, his opinions are not clear. They're not consistent. And he put us through 3 elections. And now the people of Israel are moving forward despite him. And I don't remember the last time I bothered even reading a message from him. We have Yesh Atid in the opposition. They're much more interesting. They speak beautifully.
You said you got speaking of responding to questions, you said you received something from a Likud minister or an MK, and you said you were going to tell us what that was or why you were going to respond no.
So there's a fight going on for the... I was told not to bring it up. I wanted to use this forum to push for something and help in a way that I thought would be helpful to that Knesset member, and that Knesset member has decided to continue on behind the scenes and not have people lobbying. And while I can understand why I think this group could have actually been helpful to that member of Knesset, I'm going to honor the wishes because I respect that Knesset member.
So nevertheless, the reason we call ourselves American Friends of Likud, what a friend does is respect a friend's wishes. And we're going to respect that as well. And if we can help behind the scenes, if we're called upon to do so, we'll do what we can. But in any event, I appreciate you maintaining that confidence. Another question that came up was with respect to actually Israel Katz, who's now moved from the finance ministry. I'm sorry, to the from the foreign ministry to the finance ministry. Do you think he has? Does he have a better opportunity, perhaps, to be more effective in one rather than the other?
Look, there are two people in this government who were raised in the small yeshuv of Kfar Achim, and the one with more power and who will change Israel more is Israel Katz, not Benny Gantz. And he is coming in to this terrible job at the worst possible time, when we have 1 million people unemployed. After a few months ago had 3.9% unemployed out of. So thankless job, but he's a bulldozer. He knows how to get things done, and people can sleep at night knowing that it's in his hands and he's going to fix it. It's not going to be easy, but if anyone can do it, he can do it. He's a doer. He was a terrible foreign minister. He shouldn't have been foreign minister. You don't give the foreign ministry to people who do not speak English well. I'm sure he's never addressed your group because he can't.
He has,
and
briefly. Briefly.
He has, but badly.
I said briefly, not badly.
Briefly.
Briefly.
Okay.
It's being recorded, remember? So.
I'm on record all the time.
I know.
So, it was an absolute travesty that the man was allowed to be foreign minister for a few months, and he was meant to be finance minister. He should have had this job years ago, and his success is our success.
So now I'm going to ask you about some of the, before I get to as we close in on toward the end of this this webinar, and we talk about 18 months hence, which is always an interesting topic to either discuss or ignore. I want to ask you about some of the big names within the Likud that did not merit a position while the Minister of Bananas was being created. So, to speak tongue-in-cheek, people like Avi Dichter, like Nir Barkat, who you wrote about recently, I know, in the paper a couple of days ago. Gideon Sar, obviously, I think I saw you tweet today that he actually was gracious in recognizing his position and his moving forward, at least for the time being, as an MK and not as any type of minister or chairman of any Knesset committee or anything like that.
Yes, these are very talented people. The Likud did not have enough ministries, and Netanyahu said that what he decided was to give the current ministers and not people who were not ministers before, which was something that Nir Barkat, Gideon Sar, and Avi Dichter have in common, is that they were not ministers before. Lame excuse. These are very talented people, and he could and should have found a way for them. Then there are people who are ministers who he did give portfolios to, like David Amsalem, who are not smart or talented or deserved. I don't understand his thinking, to be honest. A lot really had to do with who was critical of him and his family, and Gideon Sar had the chutzpah to run against Netanyahu. It's like the people we watch in The Last Dance who had the chutzpah to trash talk against Michael Jordan. They get punished for it, right?
You're always on the losing end. No question. You're always on the losing end in that battle for sure.
Sure. So Avi Dichter also criticized Netanyahu. You don't do that. Nir Barkat, that's more the mystery. And I invite people to email me at gil@jpost.com your own theories, or in your case, maybe your own knowledge as to what ended up happening with Nir Barkat, because there's a lot that clearly has not been reported or admitted yet on why he is not a minister. There are theories all over the scale, from he posed a threat to Netanyahu to he posed no threat to Netanyahu, and that's why he's not a minister. But it goes back. He arrived in America on a speaking tour, got a call from Netanyahu saying he's going to appoint him the Likud's designated finance minister for after a government would be formed, and in the airport made a video and said, I'm leaving because of this, and came back to Israel to be, not to be finance minister, but to be designated finance minister after campaign, a promise that I could have told him, everyone could have told him that it would not be kept. Israel Katz was going to be the finance minister. Like, it's obvious. So I'm going to admit that I don't get it, and I'm working on it. I'm talking to a lot of people trying to figure this out. Gil at JPost.com, please contribute your expertise.
So just to close this up, I want to speak about 18 months hence, right? Because that's what everyone, a lot of questions that I am getting are about, okay, so they're going to switch in 18 months. And my view has always been, and my sense has always been, anybody who thinks that whatever they're saying now is going to happen in 18 months is actually going to happen the way they say it now is just fooling themselves. Because what's going to happen in 18 months, what's going to happen in 18 days, perhaps, the trial starting, is going to be different than it is today. So don't count on just because Miri Regev, who is now the Minister of
Transportation,
in 18 months will switch to become the Minister of something
Foreign
else.
Affairs, God forbid.
Of Foreign Affairs, right. And then I saw another report that said that the Minister of Settlement Affairs, which is Tzipi Hotubeli, in 18 months, she'll be switched with by
Mark Regev.
No?
Yes, Hanegbi would take care of things, but that's supposed to be in 3 months.
And then she would become an ambassador somewhere, which I hadn't heard until today. So
in London.
So how do we approach this idea of alternate prime minister and everything just being switched nice and clean in 18 months and Bibi walking out the door? And today, actually, I don't know if it was you who posted it. In the Knesset, someone said to him, in 18 months, will you step away and walk away on this date? And he said yes. So your comment on that.
So let me take the two different parts of your question. We'll take Hotubeli first and then Bibi. Tzipi Hotubeli has been offered that in 3 months she would replace Mark Regev as the ambassador in London. And meanwhile, she was made Minister of Settlement Affairs, basically to facilitate applying sovereignty in July. Then Tzachi Hanegbi would take over as Minister of Settlement Affairs, though he was in favor of removing some settlements when he was in Kadima. People forget he was in Kadima. So she has told me she doesn't know if she's going to take this job, and Netanyahu kind of pulled a fast one on her. So that remains to be decided. Regarding the Netanyahu leaving, yes, he said, I'm going to leave in 18 months. And I somewhat do believe him, because he has to honor a commitment that he has made so firmly entrenched in law and lockdown and agreements. And then after another 18 months of Gantz in power, then he can come back when Netanyahu's trial would be done if he is proven innocent. That's why I have compared Gantz to Medvedev, if you remember, was briefly the Russian president when Putin had this term limit to deal with. And then Putin came back. And that is what can happen with Netanyahu as well. And if that was the last question, look, I am planning a speaking tour after Corona, after the apocalypse, after the Chagim. In October, I can indeed come to your community and tell people what's going on behind the scenes in Israel. And you can write me at gil@jpost.com about that. You can ask Sarah Beiser. I've spoken to 2 of her synagogues, and I'm happy to do that for you as well. My Yom Ha'atzmaut speaking tour was canceled by a stupid bug that went around the world. So we got to fix that problem. So I'll be happy to help your communities in the future. And it's always a pleasure speaking here on these conference calls to Adam and the wonderful folks at American Friends of Likud.
Well, we want to thank you, Gil, for joining us once again at American Friends of Likud, and for everybody on the call. I encourage everyone to go to reach out to Gil. It's Gil at JPost.com. And also, please to go to our website, www.aflikud.org, a whole new revamped website where you'll see this video chat, this Zoom webinar, and all of our other AFL one-on-one podcasts, as well as our newsletters and opportunities to contribute. We need to keep going in order to stay connected. And there he is in front of the Jerusalem Post sign. Thank you very much, Gil, and thanks everyone for joining us. Everyone stay healthy, stay safe, and we'll see you next time. Be well. Bye-bye.